Welcome, everyone. We are coming to you live from the Senior School STEAM Lab at York House School today on this lovely Saturday morning. I'm happy to be with you all virtually today and delighted to be here in person with Devin Taylor, alumni of class of 2002 and president of the Alumni Association. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the unceded ancestral territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. The purpose of today's gathering is to celebrate our community. And one of the special ways that we do that at York House School is with the Alumni Special Achiever Award. Devin, would you be able to tell us more about this award this morning, please?
Of course, Kara. For over 32 years, the Alumni Association has recognized alums who have excelled in their personal lives, their respective careers, and made a difference in our community. The award is presented annually to an alum who has shown excellence in their professional career or personal life. And in 2021, for the very first time, and in extraordinary circumstances, the Alumni Executive Committee made the decision to not award one Special Achiever Award, but three. All three nominated healthcare professionals as a heartfelt tribute to our alumni healthcare professionals who are on the front lines during this ongoing global pandemic.
And so we're here to celebrate today Dr. Camilla Zimmerman, class of 1984, Dr. Yvette Liu, class of 1996, and Dr. Aaliyah Kamani, 2001, all healthcare professionals in our community. And we're also delighted to have with us today Dr. Maria Chung, past board chair and parent to alum Charlotte, Eleanor, and Sophie Monk. Welcome, everyone.
And congratulations to our special achievers. Can you give us a wave if you haven't, Yvette, Aaliyah, and Camilla? Thank you. So before we dive into our conversation today, we would like to introduce our special guests. Past board chair, past parent, and today's moderator, Dr. Maria Chung, and our three special achievers.
So to start, welcome Dr. Chung. Hello, Maria. Dr. Chung is currently a clinical associate professor in geriatric medicine at UBC and consulting geriatric medicine specialist at BGH in UBC and has served as past division head. She volunteers as chair of the board of directors for Success Seniors Task Force and as past chair of Doctors of BC Geriatrics and Palliative Care Committee. Dr. Chung, we're so honored to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Please welcome also Dr. Camilla Zimmerman, class of 1984. Hi, Camilla. Dr. Zimmerman is head and Letterman chair, Department of Supportive Care at Princess Margaret Cancer Center, head of the Division of Palliative Care at the University Health Network, and a senior scientist and chair of supportive research, and a senior scientist and chair of supportive care research at the Princess Margaret Cancer Center Research Institute in Toronto. Camilla is also the professor of medicine at the University of Toronto and the inaugural director of the university's Division of Palliative Medicine in the Department of Medicine. Welcome, Camilla.
And it's my pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Yvette Liu, class of 1996. Hello, Yvette. Dr. Liu is a family physician, filmmaker, and actor here in Vancouver. She's passionate about projects that improve health and well-being. She was nominated for a prestigious Canadian Screen Award for her work as host of House Call with Dr. Yvette Liu, an award-winning show about caregivers, and has written a research-based play about chronic illness. Welcome.
And finally, please welcome Dr. Aaliyah Kamani, class of 2001. Hi, Aaliyah. Nice to see you. Dr. Kamani is a critical care physician and residency site director for critical care at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Center in Toronto. She also holds the position while concurrently working as a medical toxicologist and clinical pharmacologist at the Ontario Poison Center at the Hospital for Sick Children and Sunnybrook. She was recently appointed to the University of Toronto and is pursuing a clinician teacher educator academic track.
So we have a wonderful hour ahead of us in the company of wonderful people. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We'll ask you to please stay on mute, except for the speaker and the panel for now, and hold your questions. What we will do is after we've heard from folks today, we'll invite you to populate the chat with a question that you have, and we'll moderate those in a conversation following the panel discussion today. And without further ado, I pass over to you, Maria.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. One of the things that was left out of my bio is that I'm a Croftonian 75. But I spent way, way, way more time at York House as a parent and as a member of the board. And that song almost made me start to cry because I was remembering those days. I'm so happy to be here with you and with the 3 honorees. I'm so curious to hear about your experience. This last 2 years has been really hard on everybody, but especially on frontline healthcare workers. And we've seen that how COVID has brought out some of the worst in humanity, but it has also brought out heroism and sacrifice. And I'm really curious to see how COVID has affected all of your practices and what you see going forward. So the first question that I have is, and I'd like anybody who would like to answer this question. What was your life like as a healthcare professional before COVID, if you can remember back that far? And what was it that you enjoyed the most about what you did? So a question to anybody who wants to answer that.
I can start off. So what was my life before? So I wear a number of different hats in what I do. So I have a clinical hat, an administrative hat, and a research hat. And so I spend a lot of time with patients and in a clinic, and it's a palliative care clinic in a cancer hospital. So I'm seeing patients who are receiving cancer treatment and treating their side effects from their treatment and from their cancer, pain, nausea, shortness of breath, etc. And then I also do research. So I meet with students and write my own papers and help students write their papers. And then I also go to a lot of meetings administratively and lead a large department. So it was really kind of a mix. And what really changed with COVID is that everything became virtual. So I ran everything I do from the room I'm sitting in right now, which is my study in my house. So I sort of never left this one little room. And it's incredible how much you can do from one room, really, what we're doing right now really is incredible. So yeah, but really missed the in-person encounters. I was seeing patients virtually from here and meeting with students and doing all my meetings from here as well. So that all changed a lot.
Thank you. Dr. Kamani?
Sure. Should we all answer? Hello.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, wonderful. Devin, it's great to see you also, and a lot of familiar faces on the call, which is just so special. So thank you. A typical day, I guess. I'll be honest with you. The work itself actually hasn't changed that much for me as a critical care physician. So it was hands-on before the pandemic, and it was hands-on during the pandemic. I think what probably changed the most was the mood. That's obviously fluctuated over time. Vigilance to personal protective equipment, which became sort of the front and center, especially in 2020. And without getting too into it, probably the dynamic family visitation policies as a frontline provider, and sort of growing up and being trained in a culture where patients and families come first and they're part of your care and they're part of everything we do, to sort of a much more austere environment that sort of felt like I was working in a different time, that were sort of imposed on us for patient safety and healthcare worker safety reasons. So I think those are probably the things that changed the most and are still dynamic and fluctuating now. But yeah, sick patients before and still sick patients during.
Thank you. Dr. Liu.
I work as a family doctor. So at first, when the pandemic started, we sort of stopped seeing patients in the office. And then as we learned more about the virus, then we started adding in clinic days back. But I have to say that patients really do love telemedicine. And I think in some cases that they get better care because they're more willing to do follow-ups. Often patients will have to take a whole day off of work to come into the office to do their follow-up appointment. And when they can just do it over the phone or over video, it's easier to get them to agree to follow up. But before, I was just like a regular family practice clinic.
What do you enjoy the most about your work, Dr. Liu?
For family medicine, what drew me to the field was the longitudinal care aspect, which means that you see people from when they're very young to when they're very old, especially if you stay at the same practice for many years. So I've been at my practice for 15 years now, and I've seen kids grow up and people age and people have kids. It's really wonderful.
Such a valuable experience to have that longitudinal follow-up from one person. Dr. Kamani, what do you like the best about your work?
I think I love the sort of team-based dynamic energy of working as an intensivist. It's very hands-on and psychomotor. There's a lot of movement, there's a lot of walking, there's procedures. And I love doing that with a team. It's sort of akin to playing competitive sports at York House, and that similar feeling actually, which I just love. And so that's probably what attracted me to the specialty. And I still love it now. So, yeah.
Dr. Zimmerman, I know it might be hard for you because you wear so many different
Yeah,
hats.
well, I like wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah.
So I like the variety in what I'm doing. I think if I had to choose one thing, it would probably be the interactions with patients and their families. It's I meet patients obviously at a very vulnerable time in their lives, and to be able to make a difference and to see a change in how they're feeling in really a quick time. Often, the pain is relieved within a few days, and to have contact with people throughout what's a very difficult time, and obviously in the last few months to years of their life is very special. So I would say that's probably what I enjoy the most.
Thank you. The next question, and again, anybody can answer this. What do you think that you've learned the most about yourself that you may not have been aware of before the pandemic?
I can go.
Sure.
I'll go. Well, maybe we can all go because I don't know.
Yeah.
I think professionally, I've learned that I think I chose the right thing, because there's been some really dark hours where I've certainly questioned that as a healthcare professional over the last 2 years. But I think kind of coming out of that, and I've sort of recalibrated and landed in the place that feels authentic. I think personally, I've learned that it's okay to really speak up. And if you're feeling anger, and especially about social injustices and components of patient care and family, those values have really been crystallized during the pandemic, even though I think all of us felt that way going into it. I think there's sort of been this new paradigm shift in being able to speak your truth. And so I think that's been sort of one of the coolest things for me as like a teacher and a doctor and a friend and a daughter and all the things. That's been sort of the best part, I think.
That's wonderful. Wonderful answer. Dr. Liu, not to put you on the spot.
So I really admire my critical care colleagues and the people who have been in the hospital, because I've been sort of hiding out in my clinic, and the exposure is a lot less because we can pre-screen our patients. And I really want to thank them all, whoever else is on the line as well, for all their hard work. For me, luckily, as I said, we were able to pre-screen our patients. So it was still frightening, and especially at the beginning of the pandemic, when we didn't really know what was going on, and we were hearing about things happening in New York, Italy, China, and all the cases there. I think everyone was scared, and I was scared not only for myself, but also for my family and my friends. And so dealing with that fear and learning to cope with it in a healthy way. The way I coped with it was by getting lots and lots of information and reading. And what I found was that other people would be unable to access the information, or they would be reading the wrong information. So I felt like I had to really step up and be an ambassador of the information and be a communicator. So with my husband, I started a YouTube channel to provide information. And then I would also post information updates on my Facebook, which people found very useful. I did have a large network on my Facebook because of my connections to the arts community. And so when I posted the updates, a lot of people commented that they found them helpful. So what I learned was that I can step up and own my expertise and communicate in a meaningful way to a large audience. And my acting teacher always says, give yourself a promotion, which means don't wait for other people to ask you to do things. If you feel like you can help, you can step up yourself and give yourself that promotion and do the job that needs to be done.
That's so incredibly valuable, to fighting fire with fire, because there has been so much misinformation out on social media, and having people that can actually provide evidence-based opinions about and interpretation of what the evidence is has been really amazing. And one of the things that we know is that if people have a family physician they trust, it makes a big difference, makes a really big difference. And Dr. Zimmerman, same question.
What have I learned about myself? So I think I learned that I don't like being alone. I always thought I was, I'm a pretty disciplined person and self-motivated person, and always thought that, you know, being alone doesn't bother me too much, but this was a whole new level, I think, of isolation and not being able to see other people in person as much. And I learned I really need to see other people in person, and that seeing people on a screen is just not really the same thing. And same thing professionally. It's although I agree with Yvette as well. So my patients as well, a lot of them obviously have difficulty coming back and forth into the hospital and really enjoy virtual care, but there's just no substitute to having someone sitting in front of you and being able to talk to them in person. You miss a lot of the sort of cues and signs, I guess, that you would notice in person that you'd miss on a screen. So although there's a lot of convenience associated with it, there's just no substitute for meeting with someone in person.
And I think actually touch is very important for the practice of medicine. And that is something that we miss when we go completely online. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your honesty. That's a difficult question to answer. And we've talked about this a bit as well, but were there any times when you, and Dr. Liu had talked about a bit, where you actually felt fear for yourself, for your colleagues?
So I wouldn't say fear as such, no. But uncertainty, certainly, a lot of uncertainty, and especially at the beginning when everything was changing all the time, and especially as a leader, it was really frustrating to have to change my message, you know, from even sometimes within the same day. I sent one message to the department, and then the hospital changed its rules again. So and just the shifting in what was allowed and not allowed, et cetera. It was so hard to keep up with that I stopped sending messages as often and thought, okay, I'm just going to leave it to the head of the hospital to do that. So that I found difficult, and I think a lot of people found that difficult, and always thinking it's, especially at the beginning, you know, we thought it was just going to be a few months, right? So everyone thought the end was just around the corner, and then continuously being disappointed by one more wave and one more this and one more that. So not so much fear, but uncertainty, I think, is very difficult for most people to handle.
Did you find that your hospital was supportive of you and and this confusion that was being generated?
Very, very much so. I think our
Yeah.
CEO actually did a fantastic job of messaging. It's just, you know, the message was realistically always changing, and that's just part of COVID, right? We never know exactly what's going to be around the corner, and it's just something that I guess, need to learn to deal with. Our hospital and our departments, I'm very lucky to have a wonderful group of people working with me, and one of our psychiatrists is leading our well-being committee, and a lot of people were very interested in joining that and in helping out. And I think in helping others and in setting up activities to increase well-being, walks outside, for example, etc., you also increase your own well-being. So that's something else we learned.
Thank you. Dr. Kamani, same question. Was there ever a time when you felt scared for yourself or your colleagues? And did you feel supported by the hospital as much as they could?
Yes, I did feel really well supported at Sunnybrook. And I also, like Camilla, feel like I have an incredible group of colleagues. You know, admittedly, did we feel scared? I think probably the answer is yes. Like in March 2020, particularly, where things were just rapidly unfolding, is sort of that mix of fear and bravery. So we were like, okay, I'm trained to do this. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to figure it out and problem solve. But there's definitely moments where, sort of behind the curtain, I guess, you would be breathing heavily, and you know, I breached my PPE and standing with a colleague being like, I don't know what's going to happen, right? And or this happened by mistake, and you know, I didn't wear my mask, and I took my mask off in a funny way, and you'd have these sort of weird moments, and then you'd go at home and wake up. So I think I've almost forgotten about it now. Like now that you're asking about it again and reflecting on it, it's a bit strange to even think back that we were so fueled by adrenaline and the unknown. So yeah, I think we were scared, but we were supported, and healthcare workers were resilient and wanting to solve this problem, but it didn't come without a lot of uncertainty. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's I mean, especially with critical care, you can't stop what you're doing and wait until things are better. You just have to keep plowing through with whatever you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Dr. Liu, you were talking a bit about being able to go to online. The hospitals were pretty well supported in Vancouver, at least, but how did it feel in the community? Did you feel that you got adequate support from the powers that be as a family physician working in the community?
Yes, I think so, because at first we were allowed to close. So they let us stay home for a while until we started to figure things out. And then they sent us PPE. So they sent us masks, gowns, and we were allowed to order, and still are allowed to order it every 3 months so that we have enough supply for when we see patients. And one other really good thing was that they provided funding for telehealth, because prior to the pandemic, there was a very limited number of phone calls we could make to see patients and be paid for it. So when the pandemic started, our advocacy organizations talked to the government, and they were able to get funding for telehealth visits, which is very important, and I hope is continued, because it's still a job. We shouldn't be volunteering our time 9 to 5.
Yeah, I think there was a fee item too for counseling regarding vaccination too, which I think was new, wasn't it?
Yes, that was more
Yeah.
recent when the vaccine
Yeah.
started, which is great.
So this, I think we've talked about a bit, but looking at everything that's happened, can you mention a few things besides, we talked about the telehealth that has come out of COVID that is a positive, the COVID experience?
For me personally, I'm running a lot more, so I think that's a positive. I've run all my life, or it feels like my whole life, but I started running more longer distances and started exploring some of the ravines in Toronto as well, which I weirdly never done before. I've lived here for more than 25 years. But there's a wonderful system of ravines that can make you feel like you're almost, in the forest or something. So so I started running down those a bit more and on being closer to nature, and that helps, I guess, with well-being a lot. So and I've cut that up. So so I'd say that's one of the positives for me personally.
Thank you. Dr. Kamani or Dr. Liu?
Positives. So there's so many. Sometimes I say I feel like the pandemic like almost broke me, but also saved me, because I feel like for a lot of people in healthcare, like this issue with like burnout and resilience is not new. It was just sort of amplified by the pandemic. And I feel like one of the positives is that when you're pushed to your edge and you think you're going to break, and you do break a bit, it really allows you to sort of like pause and think about all the things that are you again. And I think the pandemic allowed me to do that. And the track to becoming a specialist is pretty intense and winding. And I don't know if I actually stopped and took a minute and maybe had to. So I think like that by far and away is the most positive thing that's happened, and sort of reclaiming myself and the sort of more feminine and sensual and intuitive and sides of myself that if you wear scrubs and a fluorescent yellow and a Gap and gown every day for 2 years and look at data and you can lose that balance a little bit. So I think that's probably the most positive thing, was sort of like crystallizing that and just remembering all the important people, many of them who I see on this call, who've allowed me to sort of step into that space again.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Dr. Liu?
I have a similar experience with exercise. I started doing online yoga, so I don't think I'm going to go back to a yoga studio now. So much more convenient at home. So that's great. I've been doing a lot of yoga at home, and then with regards to pushing everything online, I think that's been really great. Like not just health online, but meetings online, and doing things online that are like with regards to communication. So because I used to go in and be a medical expert with breakfast television, and I would go into studio, but then when that stopped because of COVID, I had to figure out how to do it from home. So with the help of my husband, who's a video producer, we were able to set up this sort of setup here that you see now. And I was able to do my segments from home, and that allowed me to connect to people further across the country. For example, I was able to develop a relationship with CTV Regina, which would not have been possible before the pandemic, because obviously I can't fly to Regina for a 10-minute or 5-minute appointment video interview. So that's been great to be able to do a lot of interviews from home, and to buy we had to buy the gear to allow that to be set up properly.
Sounds like you and your husband have an awesome partnership. Like,
yeah, I'm very lucky.
Information.
That's how we met. We met doing a show together. So.
Oh. Yeah, I think it does amplify the message, because when you're in an office, it's just one-on-one, or maybe one and a couple people. But if you have the opportunity to go online, there's so many people looking for information. So I think that's just great. So here we are, 2 years into the pandemic, and we're hoping that it would be over and done, and it's still here. Do you have any advice? What advice do you give to people in your circle or your patients and their families about how to navigate COVID? Because we know that We're not just dealing with people that have had, recurrent infections, but also people that are facing the potential for long COVID going forward. What advice do you give to people?
So I think the number one advice is get vaccinated, and get all the vaccines that you can and that are recommended. I think that's, the single thing that's going to protect us most in the pandemic is everyone getting vaccinated. So that's the number one, and then follow the public health recommendations. I think, I don't have any magic advice, I guess. Don't believe everything you read on the internet, I guess. I'll rely on your family physician and the public health recommendations.
Yeah, I think that's very wise, that we don't know everything. That's why people go into public health, is because they do get the training on how to interpret things, and that we do know that vaccines work, and that vaccines will work in the future as well. And even if it doesn't prevent you from getting sick, it's going to decrease the risk that you are going to get very, very sick, and that you will transmit it to more people.
Can I,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I wholeheartedly can say from taking care of critically ill patients, most of the patients who are getting sick now are very immunosuppressed with lots of comorbidities and or haven't been vaccinated, who end up in the intensive care unit. But what I will acknowledge, though, for the general public, especially for young people, is that we all just want to be wild and free. We all just want to be out there, and that feeling is real and valid. And so even for myself, and I'm sort of navigating that feeling and with wanting to be a responsible member of the public and be a safe person. And so whenever a resident asks me a very specific question, like, oh, Dr. Kamani, do you always give this much fluid to a patient in septic shock? I always answer, and it's really annoying for them at that stage of training, but I always say, well, it depends. And it depends on several different data points. Where are they coming from? And I guess that would be my advice, would be, stay informed, but do your own risk stratification depending on where you're going, what you're doing, who you live with. And, because especially when you're young, you need to be free and have fun, but it is always contextual and it's dynamic. And I think that's what people need to really take home from this. Because I think that the only way forward is to be connected and social again and be out in society again, but doing it responsibly.
And I think that's the difficulty, isn't it? A lot of people want a black and white answer, do this, don't do this. And a lot of times we don't have that. We don't have that level of certainty.
Absolutely.
Dr. Liu?
What I noticed at the beginning of the pandemic, and to a lesser extent now, because I think people are more used to it, was that it is very hard for people to not have those black and white answers. People wanted to know, do I wear a mask? Do I not wear a mask? Can I go out? How many people can I see? And when they didn't have those black and white answers, they became very frustrated. I think that a lot of us are not taught to think like that, to assess risk. And as doctors, we are taught, but maybe a lot of people who aren't in our field are not taught in the same way to assess risk. And that made it very difficult for them. I think now, after several years of having to do this, people are getting more used to the idea. But it is still very challenging because there are so many factors that we don't know. Is it okay to see 3 people, 4 people, 5 people? Now that there's no more vaccine passport, is it still okay for people who are immunocompromised to go and eat at a restaurant? And everyone has to decide their own level of risk. Even for mammograms, I talk to people about that in my office, like between age 40 and 50, mammograms are optional. So everyone has to decide whether the risk benefit ratio is appropriate for them. And I think it may be a good thing that people had to start to learn to assess risk, because it's very important in making medical decisions for yourself and for your family.
So when I went to medical school, it was when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and we still had this very much paternalistic, if I can use that term, view to medicine. You need this or you're going to die, kind of thing. So this shared decision making in some ways is much, it's more, it's harder, because you have to get people educated to the point where they can make their own decisions. And some people really don't want to make their own decisions, but you're like, no, I can't tell you what to do. These are the facts and these are the recommendations, but it's really up to you to make that decision. And I think a lot of people are very uncomfortable with that. If you can't give them the black or white answer, they'll just go and do everything. It doesn't, with no consideration for the information. So it's interesting. So getting to another talk, I know that you're all Yorkies and very proud of that. What do you think that helped you the most that you learned at York House? It's sort of like everything I know I learned in kindergarten. What is it that you found that you learned out of your experience at York House that has helped you? I know Dr. Kamani was talking about sports teams and how that's helped her. Any other examples of how it's helped you in your careers?
Just to play off what we were just talking about, one thing that was really encouraged at York House was like critical thinking and thinking about things from different perspectives. So that sort of leads into the risk assessment that we were talking about, and having your making your own decisions about things instead of just taking other people's word for it. Another thing that I found really helped me was that York House really emphasizes excellence and really finding your own voice and standing out. Whereas in other schools, perhaps you may be more encouraged to fit in and sort of be quiet so that you're not seen as uncool. Whereas the cool people at York House are often people who are achieving great things.
That's great. Anybody else?
Sure, I will. Some of the best things about York House, in addition to sports, I would actually say is the sense of community and my friends, actually, who, like, most of them were on this phone call, and a lot of us will and have received awards. And at the end of the day, it's not so much the award, but it's how you felt and how you made people feel, and what that kind of represents. And so to me, sort of the greatest honor of receiving this award and being recognized by York House was the people who nominated me were my best friends. And to me, that's actually probably the most wonderful thing and gift from York House, is the sense of community. And like Yvette said, that all of us are so unbelievably different, yet we're still able to sort of navigate friendships and different perspectives with love and grace. And I think that energy was sort of fostered and very unique to York House.
Thanks, Dr. Kamani. Dr. Zimmerman?
Yeah, so I was going to say the same thing. So the importance of friendships and nurturing those friendships. So I graduated from York House almost 40 years ago, which is a bit weird to think about, but true. But I still have very good friends from that time, and Jessica Hemming is one of them, who's on right now. And we still see each other regularly, and she's still one of my very, very best friends. So it's those friendships, you don't really realize it at the time, but they're going to guide you through your life. And I still get very good advice from Jessica, which I follow. And so friendships is one thing. The other thing, just academically, just an outstanding school for teaching me how to organize my ideas and how to write. I still do a lot of writing, though it's scientific writing, but what I learned in English and York House is still the backbone of what I use when I'm writing papers now. And we just had some outstanding teachers at York House who yeah, sort of were structured what I did later on academically. And you don't realize how great those teachers are until you're in university and you realize, wow, those really were excellent teachers and taught me so much. So very grateful for all I learned and for my friends.
Thank you so much for your answers. Do we have time for the last question? Is that?
I think so. Yes, please.
Okay, so the last question, and if I can just get you to give maybe 1 minute each, what advice would you give to current Yorkies who want to pursue a career in health?
So I can go first with that one. So I follow your dreams, I guess, would be the first one, and don't expect the dream to come sort of jumping out at you. It's often a meandering route to where you want to go eventually, and take the time to look around a bit and figure out what you want to do. Often the first thing you think you want to do isn't. I took a very circuitous route to academic palliative care. It definitely wasn't what I thought I was going to be doing when I graduated from high school. But so yes, take the time in your undergrad years to take different courses and don't be entirely streamlined in terms of your thinking, and allow your mind to wander a bit, would be my advice.
Thank you.
I guess that my advice is very similar. And it's actually kind of comforting to hear Camilla say that, because she's more senior, and sometimes it's not the most winding road, I would say, in medicine and finding your path, but it is certainly incredibly fulfilling. And so I would say if you're into it and you love it, helping people and teaching and pushing things forward is always going to be rewarding. And it's always exciting to get up and come to work and to work with people that I love. And that's what I would say about medicine and probably any job is to look for that. And I think that comes with knowing yourself and expecting to fall down and then figuring out strategies to how to stand back up again. And that comes with who can support you, and a lot of resilience that I think gets built up with people who've gone to York House.
Thank you. And Dr. Liu.
Yes, I would agree that because medicine is such a long and hard road, that it's important to take the time to make sure that's what you want to do. Having said that, medicine has a lot of different possibilities. Like when you say medicine, it doesn't just mean sitting in an office and seeing patients. There's so many different things that you can do. I would say that if you do think you're going to want to go into medicine and you're pretty sure, get your electives early, because it's very, very annoying to have to go back after your undergrad and do them. It's better to just integrate them into your undergrad. And then if you get into medicine and if you enjoy it, I agree that it is a very, very rewarding career. I always say I gave my 20s to medicine, but it was worth it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much to all of you. York House obviously chose extremely well when they chose this year, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and thank you for answering my questions. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Maria and Camilla, Yvette and Aaliyah, for such an incredible conversation. You've highlighted the magic sauce of this community, and what a privilege for us to connect in with you this morning around the personal and professional, and also the ways that you're shaping conversations and fields and also relationships way beyond your own areas of influence. I think it's really exceptional. From where I'm sitting here in the day-to-day life of York House, I wish all the students could have been right here listening to you weave together these really personal, grounded, thoughtful, inspiring insights. And I'm sure we're going to find ways to get this to students in our midst currently, because they will be so inspired to hear this as well. Two things. I'd like to just acknowledge that Michelle Ostro, alum from 1984, our board chair, is here with us today as well, just to do a little shout out and hello to Michelle, among many others around this table. And we'd like to open up to questions now. So I invite you to turn to the chat. I'm going to pop up my computer screen here and make sure that we can take some questions this morning, and I'll help you with those. Let's see what we've got here. Wow, so many thanks already for this conversation. That's what I can see in the chat. People speaking about craving human connection. And I just want to speak as we're waiting for some questions to populate here that I'll share. I just so appreciated some of the insights that you shared today, Dr. Liu, around owning your expertise. That's interesting. Really thoughtful provocation, I think, that we might take up in our next assembly. Speaking the truth, and your truth, Aaliyah, you mentioned, which again is another one that I think we could probably pop these up on posters around the hallways and see what our young friends here think about this. And also the power that you speak about, Camilla, of realizing the face-to-face and how important that is for you. As well as these friendships in these hallways. It's pretty exciting. I'm looking in the chat and I don't see questions yet. Do you see one? Oh, is there? Where is that? Can you see?
Joy?
Oh, yes, here we go. Joy, with everything going online, what do you think about the upcoming younger generations and their increase in screen time? Not only the young ones, but everyone.
Yeah, so I've got 3 kids in their 20s, and it's been hard raising kids in this generation of screen time, let alone now. I think we all get too much screen time now. I get too much screen time, that's for sure. And it's hard to avoid it. All of school in some points is on screen as well. So, and it's also very hard to, with kids, police what is learning screen time and then what is hopping off the learning to fun screen time. So, it's I think it's a real problem, actually. And as much as we're all going virtual now, it'll be really important, I think, in the future to strike the right balance, especially in schools. I don't know if Yvette, maybe from a family medicine perspective, has something to say about that as well.
I think the main thing is being aware about it. And there's actually been research showing that time outdoors in the forest is beneficial for mental health, for immunity. So the guideline right now is to spend at least 2 hours outdoors in a park or in a forest around trees, and have that spread out between at least 2 sessions of 30 minutes each. So that's your prescription for parks. And the trees actually secrete these chemicals that we know affect our immune system. And so get your outdoor time. And I think just being really aware of that and tracking that. Screens are inevitable. They're a part of our future. So we have to accept that, but also be mindful of how much time we're spending on the screens.
Are there any other questions that we can take this morning? There's so many accolades in the chat. I'm sure that you can see them. Just so many valuable insights and such gratitude for that. Is there a final question we can take from the group, or perhaps one of the panelists? Do you have a question that you'd like to open to the panel?
Are there any aspiring Yorkies who are wanting to be doctors, and do they have any questions for us? Or maybe not.
Well, you know what we may do is to take that question and to broaden it, to share this recording with others, to invite those and share those out if we get them, to provoke a good conversation, because there sure are a lot of young York House students who are interested in exploring this journey, and to have heard your different pathways is just so inspiring. The other thing I will say that was inspiring today was to hear what it was that you've taken from York House. And what you value in those friendships, relationships, inspiration, excellence, critical thinking opportunities. I've had the privilege this year of participating in interviews with alum who are now seeking to bring their children to York House in JK and SK. And they're vocalizing the same things. I mean, what you're speaking to are the values that really you have contributed to in this community, and that we cherish so much as a broad community. So there's a lot to take away in terms of bringing the 4,000 strong alum, a big, huge worldwide team together in communication moving forward. It has been my pleasure to help out this morning, to partner with Devin too. The final thing I want to say about magic was that something that you spoke about, Dr. Chung, as we started today, was what the song brought up for you in terms of emotion, as you heard it at the beginning. And Devin expressed a similar thing today about how emotional it was for her as a young person. And I'll let her speak to that, but also to speak to some closing words today as well.
Yes, thank you, Kara, for that. Throw me under the bus there. So I learned the school song in preschool before I even got a spot in Miss England's kindergarten class, the Oranges. And I used to cry during the school song in assembly from like grade 1 to 4 every time. I don't know what it was, but it definitely has struck. Hearing it this morning, I almost started to cry again. So thank you all.
Devin did assure me it was out of inspiration.
Yes, it was not
fear,
sad.
not worry, not sadness, but you were motivated by that.
I was motivated and proud to be a Yorkie, proud that I knew it, proud that I'm a third generation Yorkie, and just happy to be at the school. I love it. I'm so glad to be back here as the president of the Alumni Association. We've had such an enriching experience this morning with everybody. I know I speak for many of us here at York House School and the Alumni Association executive when I say thank you all very much for your time. We are so proud to call you all Yorkies.
We are, and there are a couple little announcements here as well. I'm so grateful to you. A few announcements about Alumni Summer Gathering.
Yes, we have our first alumni in-person gathering for the first time since the pandemic began on June 15th at the Shaughnessy Restaurant at Van Dusen Garden. We're also waiting for a few more nominations for our 2022 Special Achiever Award. The deadline is May 31st. So if you know anybody else that you would like to nominate, please get in touch with Ita at the alumni office. And then we also, our Golden Alumni Luncheon has been moved to September to coincide a little bit better with Founders Day. So the Golden Alumni Luncheon will be on September 22nd. And then finally, in person again, Alumni Day will be held on September 24th. And I look forward to welcoming you all back to the school. Thank you.
So exciting. So thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your wise insights. Dr. Chung, thank you so much for chairing this and moderating the discussion today. That is so special for us as well. I'd also like to extend a very special thank you to the organizers of today, Ita, who is here, who's done so much to make this possible today. We're so grateful to you, Ita, as well as Calvin Lee, who's been our technology support. And you know, it really is a time of opening and renewal and hopefulness. And we look forward to seeking more ways like this to bring people together in real and beautiful conversations. And so thank you all, and we wish everybody a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.